Hello and welcome to the Sales Code Leadership Podcast. My name is Kevin Teeler. I'm the host of the podcast and the founder of Sales Code Limited. This week, delighted to introduce Ed Armishaw. Ed, how are you today?
I'm brilliant. Very well, thank you. And thank you for having me on the Sales Code Leadership Podcast.
You're looking very perky for a Monday, Ed.
Yeah, I've literally just got back from a lunchtime bike ride, so I hope I'm not looking too red in the face. I hopped in the shower quickly, and then I was here ready for you.
You look absolutely fine, my friend. Absolutely fine. Now, for the benefit of the listener, we're going to anchor this conversation quite a bit today around a common passion that Ed and I discovered when we were networking and connecting recently, which is CliftonStrengths, strengths-based leadership, a way of identifying what's unique and special about you, invented by Gallup about 20 years ago, which I'm an accredited coach for. Ed, how did you, before we get into this sort of general conversation about the StrengthsFinder approach, I'm trying to understand, where you're coming from. What is it you get paid to do now? How would you answer that question?
Really simple. I get paid to help sellers achieve their dreams. Really easy.
Help sellers achieve their dreams.
Yeah, that's my goal. It's a really simple one. If you think about particularly enterprise selling in the technology sector, which of course we both worked in for many, many years, it's one of the few industries that you can come into with in many cases, you don't need to even have a degree or similar. You can just come in and get into all sorts of walks of life and different backgrounds, but you can completely change your life. And that to me is amazing. And therefore it's, one of the reasons I fell into it, I guess. But I think people get caught up on goals. But for me, I'm a dreamer. It's all about dreams. And some of the best bits of work and best people that I've worked with have enabled me to achieve my dreams or have helped me along the way. And so when I made the shift from selling as an individual contributor into sales leadership, I made it my mission, my crusade, if you like, to bring a bit of that positivity and experience to those in my care and around my care, to help them achieve their dreams, because everyone wants to do different things in life, right? They're all individuals.
Absolutely right, they are, for sure. Again, we're going to come back to that topic. Is this the career you had in mind at 16, then helping salespeople achieve their dreams?
No, definitely not. I fell into sales like most or many of us. I think it's lovely now that we are seeing people enter this industry, enterprise selling, sales in general, with that as a goal, and actually aspiring to do that. I didn't even know what this job was at 16. I actually wanted to be a journalist, believe it or not. Quite a strange career choice for somebody that didn't know any journalists and is terribly awful at spelling because I'm dyslexic. But that was my goal at 16. Never made it happen. But there we go. Maybe that's part of why I do a lot of the LinkedIn stuff, because I enjoy writing and kind of getting under the skin of what makes people tick, which is also helpful in sales, I guess. So yeah. But sports journalism particularly was my aim.
Was there a model that you had? Was there a role model, somebody that you admired in that space?
No, actually not really. I guess it was more born out of, I've always been fascinated by human stories. I studied history and archaeology at university. And at that age of 16, that was always at that age knew that I was going to go and do history, because I loved kind of the stories of the past and seeing how that linked through to kind of modern day and the generational shifts and all that sort of stuff. And at the time, journalism seemed to be an outlet for telling other stories. I literally never, I think I did work experience. I did work experience at North Sound Radio in Aberdeen for like 3 days. And I think that put me off, if I'm honest, because it seemed like quite a dreary job. Sorry if there's anyone from North Sound Radio listening here. It was fun, but it didn't inspire me massively, if I'm honest. I thought it'd be all interviewing footballers and telling stories, and actually it was a lot more kind of fetching the tea and editing. Back in the day on old big old computers, editing down audio clips and stuff. It didn't quite float my boat. So yeah, things shifted from there.
How did you come into sales in the tech sector?
Well, that's a story. I mean, through volleyball is the honest answer. There you go. But you didn't expect that one.
I didn't expect that one, Ed. No, that is That's a new one. Through volleyball. Okay.
through volleyball.
You're always good at bouncing back from adversity.
There you go. Um, you got. I'll set them up. You knock them down.
Absolutely.
I went to university in Nottingham, and I played in a very successful volleyball team there. I represented England universities, and like many people graduating in the wasn't even mid noughties, early noughties, I kind of didn't really know what I wanted to do. I'd heard about these graduate schemes, but I didn't apply in time. Didn't really get on with it, and didn't know what to do. And then luckily, a guy that I'd been involved with in the athletics union at Nottingham came up to me and said, "Hey, you do sport at quite a high level, don't you? You play volleyball?" I said, yeah. And he went, "Oh, there's this grad scheme at Vodafone an enterprise grad scheme at Vodafone." Didn't know what enterprise was at the time. For talented athletes, you should apply. And I did. And I somehow scraped my way in with, I think, 3 or 4 others. And they put me into like the classic grad rotations in their enterprise division. So it was selling, mobile phones, flogging blowers, B2B, so to big corporate companies. And I was working in the commercial team, so like deal desk, looking at profit and loss of deals. And I really enjoyed that, actually, like the kind of cut and thrust of the numbers, but I was working with lots of the sellers. And I just took a look at them and was like, well, hey, I get the numbers bit, I get people. They're all driving fancy, company cars and wearing nice suits and getting all the nice BlackBerries BlackBerry phones that I wanted at the time. Like, I'm going to go and do that. And that was it. That was the start. And I've been in enterprise sales across, big corporates and startups for the last nearly 18 years since.
So Vodafone was hiring salespeople with a sports background.
Yeah, grads with a sports background.
They thought there would be a good fit, that if you're a competitive sports person, you'd probably be a competitive salesperson.
Literally, you've just hit the nail on the head. The guy that was the enterprise business unit director at the time, Kyle, he sponsored the British University Sports Association. It's now called Bucks. It used to be called Booster. It was the Wednesday afternoon sports, if you remember those. Vodafone sponsored that in my last couple of years at uni. So it was like, as I say, early noughties. And as part of that, they took sort of a handful of grads each year and pushed them into a mix of different roles, but typically across commercial, marketing, sales, and then kind of people fell into what suited them ever since. It's actually really interesting because of the 3 or 4 of us that started, one started in marketing and is now a marketing director, and she's doing really, really well. 2 of us ended up in sales. The other chap, Mike, is I think he's the equivalent of like an AVP, so area vice president or similar at Microsoft. And of course, I've had a long career, most recently at Salesforce. So we all did quite well. And in fact, actually, the one other guy dropped out after 6 months because he wanted to work in sport, and he's the CMO at Crystal Palace, so he did all right as well. So it was a good grad scheme, really good fun.
But how long were you a bag-carrying salesperson before you moved into a managerial role then, Ed?
I've done a bit of a mix, actually. So enterprise selling for 16 years on and off, and then leadership in 2 different roles, one in a startup a few years ago, and then most recently at Salesforce, where my last nearly 18 months at Salesforce were as an RSD, so as a sales leader. So I've done a bit of both, but majority of my career, sort of 16 or so of the 18 years, has been direct selling.
You find it a hard transition to make from being responsible for your own number to being responsible for a team?
It's a transition for sure. I think yes, it is a hard transition, is the first question. Of course it is. Like anything, it's a completely new set of muscles and learnings. Made easier by the fact that particularly the moving from IC, strategic enterprise, a Salesforce into sales leadership there, that transition was actually easier because I'd been leading a large virtual team of like 45 to 60. I can't remember. It was a big old virtual team on one of the large strategic accounts, a grocer here in the UK. So I was actually doing more and more kind of people leadership as an IC, just without authority. They didn't report to me, but ultimately it was my job to kind of set the strategy and put the people in place and set the processes and get an understanding for the people, most importantly, get them on side so that then they'd work with me towards that, that big picture of success that we built on that growth. And that was really successful. And then I kind of transitioned into leading with authority into a team. And actually, in some ways, it was a bit easier because I only had, 6 to 8 people to worry about and not 50 odd. So it was just a relatively, that transition was smoother. When I first moved into leadership in a startup, it was an absolute baptism of fire. I did all the, we as a company were very young, and I made all the classic mistakes that first time leaders do. I hired a bunch of people that looked and sounded like me, and that didn't work. And there was a whole bunch of stuff, but we came through that, and it was an amazing leadership start, I guess, and then went back into IC for a bit and then back into leadership.
What do salespeople need from leaders?
Oh, crikey, that's a big old question. It depends on the individual. I think that's the first thing to say. So it's really simple when looking at leading. Actually, anybody, they're all human beings, right? So it doesn't matter whether they do sales or whether they're in marketing or whatever. Like, any leader has got to lead the individual first. I think there's kind of, in my career anyway, I've worked for sort of 3 different types of leaders. There are the ones that are your partners in crime. They're there with you, alongside you. They do everything from champion and cheer to critique and feedback. They'll be with you and the customer if needed, and also they'll step back if needed. They're completely individual to you, but they're your partner in crime. They're on the same crusade. You're 2 peas in a pod. You then get the leaders that are a little bit more standoffish, but generally have got your back. And then finally, you've got the kind of, I guess they're becoming a little bit more old-fashioned now, the more command and control, like, much to the beat of my drum types. I'd like to think that if you spoke to the people that have worked with me, certainly in the last 3 or 4 years, they describe me as a partner in crime type leader. I really would like to think that, because the best people that I have worked for and with over the years, there's only a handful actually that fall into that category, but they're the ones that have had just the most massive impact on my career and in helping me achieve, my various different dreams at the time.
But we opened this discussion by leading on strengths from a sales perspective. One of the things you said in your intro, your sort of bio at the beginning of the call, was that you were fascinated by what makes salespeople tick. Yes. But why are you fascinated by what makes salespeople tick, and how long did it take you to figure out what makes them tick?
Let's break that down into those 2 points. Why am I fascinated in what makes them tick? Well, it's funny, actually. I was listening to one of your previous podcasts with Chris Hatfield, who's brilliant. Love Chris. And he totally stole my thunder, if I'm honest, by talking about the fact that it's very difficult to motivate people. They have to motivate themselves. And I really agree with that. So understanding what makes someone tick, getting under the skin of, why they do what they do. Why have they chosen this as a career when, let's be honest, there are far easier ways of paying mortgages or rent? They might not be as, as lucrative, but there are easier ways of making a living than carrying that big number on your back from January 1 every year, or from the, whatever your various fiscal start is. So getting under the skin of that is really important. Only then, once you've understood what motivates people, I'm going to come on to how we find that out in a second, but only once you get under the skin of what drives people, can you then effectively lead them, and can you effectively inspire them? Because I don't believe in being able to motivate people. I want to work with self-motivated individuals, self-motivated sellers. That's a standard. And I believe the vast majority are. You've just got to understand what it is that motivates them. Once you've done that, and the easy way to do that, by the way, is to ask them, very simply. You might not get the full answer from them initially, because you've got to build trust with people. That's totally normal. But by asking and finding that out, by asking them what their picture of success looks like, by asking them what their dream is, all those things, you can start to then tie into, okay, how am I going to inspire this person? How am I going to support them? What sort of leader do I have to be for them, to hopefully help them bring their best self out, create the platform so that they can go and deliver the, ultimately what you need them to do, which is deliver for the organization, for the team, and for you. Simple.
What about the second piece of the question?
What was the second piece? How do you find out?
Yeah.
I mean, observation, number one, just trying to get under the skin of their background and why they're doing what they're doing. asking them is really important. You know, I sit everyone down that works in and around me, for me, with me, above me, ask them why they do what they do, what their picture of success looks like over the next, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is. I hate that 5-year view question, by the way, but try and get an understanding of what direction they're traveling. And then if you don't feel like you've got the answer, because sometimes, as I say, people don't want to open up to you straight away. That's normal, wait and build trust, and it will come out eventually. And, I found this actually just last year. I had somebody working for me. They're absolutely amazing. Phenomenal seller, work themselves into the ground like you've never seen, Kevin. Just, I was genuinely worried about the amount that they were putting in. Big shift. And I'd asked those questions and hadn't really got under the skin of a real answer. And it was only sort of 3 or 4 months into us working together that they sat me down. We were having lunch and told me their background, told me their story, and I was totally blown away. But it took that time to build that trust for them to then share something pretty deeply personal. And then that really gave me an understanding for, okay, this is why this individual operates like they operate. This is why they are doing this role. And I need to be very, and then was able to lead for them much more effectively from that point moving forwards. But it's tricky, right?
It is tricky. I think it's absolutely true that you can't motivate people. We're all self-motivated. Whether that motivation is helpful or not is sometimes a different matter, but we're all obviously self-motivated because we're programmed to survive. So we'll do whatever we think we need to do to survive. What you can do as a bad leader, and I speak from personal experience of having been a bad leader for parts of my career, is demotivate people. And if you don't understand people, you're much more likely to demotivate them, because something I might say or do would affect you in a different way to somebody else. You may take it constructively. Somebody else may see that as unhelpful communication. And if you don't understand, and to me, that's where the Strengths Finder comes into play.
It does.
In the sense of, when I did it, it provided an enormous amount of self-awareness for me. And I was 45, 50 years old when I took this assessment for the first time. So, it was a revelation to me, even at that age, when you would think, well, this guy probably understands himself pretty well. But actually, the depth of what I found out about myself, it's a life's work, isn't it? I know you took the assessment a few years ago, didn't you? What impact did CliftonStrengths have on you?
Very similar to the one it had on you, actually. It was a real light bulb moment. I'd been introduced to like Myers-Briggs and the various other different types of psychological assessments a lot earlier. I think I did MBTI when I was like 13. My dad did it at work and then brought it home and we did it. I've been the same Myers-Briggs type, by the way, for like 20 odd years, right. 25 years, doesn't change. But doing CliftonStrengths with a coach at the time, I think I did it it was either 2018 or 2019. So we're talking 4 or 5 years ago. It was a real moment of like, wow, that's me. Like, it's reading it, staring back at you and like, okay, now I get why I'm a builder. I love, as an AE, I love doing new logos. Startup built that up, sold it. Leadership took on a team that I don't think many others would have wanted to take on, which needed building from the ground up. And if you then look at my Strengths Finder, it's like, okay, this guy's a builder very clearly. And it's actually really shaped how I think about not just the people that I have in the team, because you have, a certain amount of control of that, but it's shaped how I think about the people I have around me, because I think your community as a leader is really, really important. Having lots of people who look and sound like you isn't actually a great thing. You want that cognitive diversity of, people who will challenge you. And, so I've deliberately courted that in mentors and I'm actually still working with the same coach, but yeah, in those people that are giving me guidance or challenging me and feeding back to me, because then you've got that nice blended approach, because I will always see the world a certain way straight away, because if that's ultimately who I am. That's what my Strengths Finder says about me.
What are your top 4 strengths? Do you remember?
I knew you were going to ask me that. Top 4. I know it's fine. I knew you were going to, so I've got them here. Strategic, maximizer, futuristic, and woo. So there you go. I told you I'm a new business guy, and I'm a builder, and it says it on, right there in those top 4. What's been really fascinating actually, Kevin, was I did that first as an IC,
Individual contributor.
Sorry, I see. I'm using very American software company terms. An individual contributor, and then I redid it when I moved into leadership, just to see if there's, and there's a specific, as you'll know, there's a specific leadership track to CliftonStrengths, and that was really effective, because then, when I then introduced the CliftonStrengths profile into all of my team, the first thing I did was talk them through my profile and say, okay, this is what you're dealing with here. This is where I'm going to naturally gravitate towards in conversations. And, I had some people that we shared, a couple. That's quite normal to have, a couple of those things. And then I had a couple of people working for me who, were almost the complete opposite in their strengths. And it really helps you flex your style to them. And I'd hope by sharing it, it's helped them flex their style towards me. But who knows? And, to your point earlier, you can get it really wrong and demotivate people completely unintentionally, just because, you're something that is a real strength for you is a complete, is almost going to come at it the opposite, and you'll clash. So I'm, as I just talked about, I'm a, we'll walk through it, but like, I'm someone that, is a maximizer, right? I really strive for that excellence if I can get it. And I want those around me to do the same. If we have
maximizer is good to great. That's how I characterize that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. That. So it's pushing for that kind of, let's go for it. Now, that can really rub people up the wrong way if they're more considered and more analytical. And, I will always believe there's a way. And actually, if someone who does see the world in a very different, lens, it can really, really turn them off very quickly. So you just have to be aware of that as a leader. But also, I know that you're a sports fan as well. Like I use this analogy when people ask me what the hell, like, why are you doing this strength stuff? You're supposed to be a revenue leader, focus on the numbers and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, no, but the people deliver the numbers. The score will take care of itself if you get the people.
People actually say that to you.
Oh God. I mean, not in as many words, but you can tell. So, certain types of sales is a job that delivers numbers. You're supposed to be delivering numbers, right? That's a huge part of the output. So I'm fine with that. But the score takes care of itself if you get the people right. So
it does.
Understanding people's strengths inherently, and then trying to, as best as possible in all interactions with them, whether it's setting stretch projects, whether it's, their own personal development that you're supporting, whether it's, the pinch points in the year when things are stressful, understanding and helping them pull out those strengths at the times, or covering for the areas where they're not as strong, it's a really fascinating balance. And someone said to me that, like, oh, why do you do the strength stuff? And I said, well, look at it this way. Like, I'm a football fan and I'm a Manchester United fan, right? Which has not been great recently, but was very good.
What do you mean it's not been great? You finished in top 3. You actually beat my team into a top 3 slot. So I that's all relative. That is a very competitive person speaking right there. By most people's standards, Man U has had a blistering season, especially compared to the last few seasons you've had, Mr. Armishaw.
It's relative attractiveness.
So you're a maximizer. It's not good enough. Right?
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, exactly
right there. If you don't finish in first place, it's nothing.
True. Fair point. I will take that. But I grew up watching the United team of the 90s, the class of 92, Sir Alex.
You were spoiled, my friend. That was the golden age.
I really was. It was the golden age. But here's the sort of thing that I've used this analogy with a couple of people when trying to explain why we're doing this strengths piece. If you're Eric Harrison and you've got that class of 92, the Beckham gigs, all that lot, and you finish training and David Beckham decides to stay out there to take some free kicks, and you tell him not to bother, and actually he's got a rubbish left foot, so you want him to go and work on that instead, you're absolutely doing it wrong, because his strength was his ability to work really hard and to whip free kicks and crosses and all that. And he went and worked on those. And guess what? He became what? I don't know. Is he the most capped Englishman? He was the captain for a long time. He was an incredible superstar, right? Born out of focusing very, very specifically on his strengths. That in itself says a lot about how, and if I look at then how I've been led over the years, you can tell a leader that gets this by the way they approach the personal development conversations with you around your weaknesses.
Absolutely. You don't take a fish out of water and tell it to ride a bicycle.
No, you definitely don't. And that's no.
But so I think your story about Beckham, that's very, very appropriate. I love that. Thank you for that, because that That really does describe it. Here's the thing. I come across that objection as well from sales leaders because we're traditionally very numbers driven.
Yeah.
And I do find it, I understand why they say that. I do find it frustrating, like you. And generally, the way they answer that question, I'd answer it slightly differently, another angle on what you're saying. We all accept and spend a lot of time and money on trying to understand our customers, their business, and their projects, needs and requirements, business drivers and outcomes. All of that's drilled into us now. Why do we spend almost no money or time or technology on trying to understand the salespeople that work with us and for us that are trying to understand those customers? Doesn't make any sense to me.
I can agree with you more. And I think it's more stark now for sales leaders. And again, I'm going to give you my lens through, having worked in big tech during this time. But if you think we've had the pandemic, which, it was unprecedented, let's be honest. And the impact that's had, particularly on the mental health of everybody. And actually, if you look at the demographic of most of the, the enterprise sellers broadly, they're going to have been affected by that possibly more than some of the others. And then you throw in the recessionary environment we're working in and the fact that, a lot of these people have never sold through this type of an environment before. If you don't look after the people right now, you are not going to hit the numbers, because there are some people that are operating out of, probably not delivering their best work because they've just been through 3 years or whatever it is of just turmoil across, and they're people, they're not robots. So it goes down to, using the Strength Finder is really useful because, again, it's a great way of pulling them back. I always talk about A's and B's, by the way. I'm really simple. So I ask people before we even do Strength Finder, what are your A's and B's? What do you love doing that you gravitate towards that, you're naturally really good at? And then we do Strength Finder, and often it's the first two things that they've said are the 1 and 2. But by doing that, you're actually going to, help people particularly in this time when it is hard, as you've just said. You'll help them through the really difficult bits, because people want to enjoy their job. They want to love what they're doing. And, what we do, enterprise sales, I've worked on many big deal transactions, 7 figures, multi-million, new logo contracts, building businesses, etc. Right? Like, that is not an activity business. It's an impact business. Creating impact comes from people. It doesn't come from, managing spreadsheets or, the CRM. Yes, those are important data points, but it comes down to the human being and naturally, where they are at any point. And people always ask, what does high performance mean? Well, high performance is about getting the people right first, and then you can worry about, the process and the patches and the timing and all the other stuff that comes into selling. Sorry, I could talk about this for England. Literally, it's like clearly a very, very passionate subject.
I actually think that the rise of artificial intelligence is likely to liberate salespeople to be people again and not process robots, because the robots are going to do a lot of that work intelligently, much better than we can. It's the human-to-human interface that you and I are talking about here, which is where big deals are done.
Yeah, it is. It is
that relationship.
It's this. I said impact over activity there. I meant it. So it's not. Have you hit the phone 100 times this week or whatever else? Have you sent X number of emails? That's a load of rubbish, right? It works in certain types of sales environments, but if you want to do the biggest deals, exactly what you just said, you need to be thinking about how am I going to help the senior execs in the customer that you're working with solve the biggest problems, the multi-million problems for them. And it comes down to people at that point. How do you interact with them? How do you get in front of them? How do you create impact for them so they want you to help them, solve whatever that big challenge is? And unfortunately, right now, with the environment that we're seeing, it's getting harder and harder to do that for A's, but the good ones are adapting. The good leaders are adapting with their salespeople as well. And, they're still able to help, solve for the biggest problems. That's where the biggest deals get done, which is where, most of the people that I work with want to do big deals. So that generally goes down very well if you can help them do that.
It all sounds like you've got a lot on your plate as a sales leader. What do you do to unwind at the end of the day?
Oh, cracky me. Cycle my bike as fast as humanly possible without killing myself is I'm really lucky actually. I immediately go to cycling. That's probably the wrong thing. I should have gone to family. I've got a 6-year-old Jacob who, obviously, it's a delight to hang out with him. So spend a lot of time with him, of course. But yeah, outside of family life, spend a lot of time in Lycra, flying around on bikes that cost more than most people's cars. But yeah, it's good fun. I'm just about to set off on a big charity ride, as you know, because we were chatting about it earlier. I'm going from London to Amsterdam on Wednesday to Friday this week. So it's about 500k kilometers or so. So yeah, really looking forward to that.
Have you ever cycled that far before, or is that a long distance for you?
Oh God, no, I've cycled that far before, in shorter time as well. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be good. And I decided to make the challenge slightly harder for myself and tag on another 1,000 kilometers in the preceding 3.5 weeks before.
Oh, Ed Armishaw.
Well, I'm like, I like maximizing, right? So when someone said to me like it's £1,500 that the charity donation limit, and I was like, well, how can I make a story out of this? 1,500 kilometers for £1,500 sounds like it might work. So I tagged that on. But apart from my legs feeling a bit sore and tired, it's been good fun.
Well, by the time the podcast comes out, you'll be back from that challenge for a couple of days at least, if not a few weeks. So you'll be able to update LinkedIn with how you got on, but I'm sure you'll smash it, Ed. Looking at you, you look fit and ready to go.
I'm really looking forward to it. It should be really good fun. What's
the one thing that you wish you knew at the beginning of your career that you picked up along the way, Ed?
Okay, just one.
Maximizer again. It comes out, doesn't it? Well, you can have two. There you go. I'll break all the rules for you.
Yeah, go on. There's two. They're sort of linked though, actually. The first is just soak up experience, including those experiences which you feel are negative, because you can always learn from something, right? You can, even if you think it's not the way you want to do it, you can always learn that's, something tick off your list, not tick on. And then people make the world go round. I think that is, like we talked about earlier, sales is about people, life is about people, relationships make the world go round. So networking, learning from people, and, if you can get that right, if you can invest and maintain relationships, you'll find that life, sales, your career is much, much easier. Moving into sales leadership will be a lot easier for you as well, because you'll have experience around you that, you can call upon willingly rather than, being on your own. So yeah, definitely it's the people.
Ed, it's been a great conversation about strengths-based leadership. Thanks so much for your time.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you for yours. I've been a listener and a fan for ages. So you asking me to come on was a real surprise. So yeah, thank you very much, Kevin. It's been a brilliant conversation.
You're very welcome. And I'd like to thank the listener as well. Please do give us a review if you like what you've heard, because it helps to boost the ratings enormously. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you don't miss the next episode.